Hey there everybody, Nate Brown here and welcome to section 7 of my tutorial on how to make a basic animation rig in Blender. In this section we're going to be talking about custom properties, and we're going to be adding a bunch of custom properties to our foot and hand rigs in order to control a bunch of the functionality that we've created. So let's get started. We've got our foot here, and what we can do is just zoom in on your foot so that you can see all of the different pieces here. Get yourself a good view so you can see everything. And we're going to add all of these custom properties to our foot controller, this one in the center that we created. If you're not already there, bring yourself into pose mode. And then if we go into our bone properties tab over here, we can just collapse some of this stuff down. And we're going to be adding 8 properties to our custom properties here. So you can just add them all at once, and then we'll go through and we'll take a look at all of them. As you can see here, for each property we have the name, we have a value, which is on a slider that you can change here. We've got edit, and then we've got this little minus sign, which is how you delete them if you've added too many or something like that. Go ahead and hit edit on one of them. And let's take a look at our little menu here. We've got different properties that we can change within the property. We've got the property name, pretty self-explanatory. We've got the property value, which is the most important one here. The property value is, not only is it the current value of the property, but it dictates what type of a property this is. Blender has it has 3 different types of properties, essentially 2 though. We've got integers, floats, and we've got booleans. Integers being a number that is a whole number, 1, 2, 3, 4. Floats being a number including a decimal point, 1.836, something like that. And then a boolean is kind of a true or false statement. The way you would create a boolean with this, because an integer and a float is really the only 2 options, you could create a boolean though by making it an integer and then making the minimum and the maximum only one number apart, so that it's basically just 2 settings. You can switch between 2 different whole numbers. The way that you do that with the property value is you either put a decimal point on the number or you don't, and that'll give you either a floating point with a decimal point or a integer with no decimal point on it. So just for as an example, if I switch this to 1 and I hit OK here, now you'll see that property, the first one that we have here, is switched to just a 1 without any decimal points. And if we drag this back and forth, it's just going to switch between 0 and 1. So this is set to an integer. It also is working as a boolean because we only have 2 states for it. But if we were to add a higher maximum or a lower minimum, it would be an integer with just whole numbers that you can choose between. For this video and everything we're doing on this rig, we are going to be using floating point numbers for everything. So we want to make sure that there is a decimal point on our property value, but we also want it to be 0. So you can set this to 0.0. The next thing we have here is the default value. The default value is pretty self-explanatory as well. It is just the default of what this property should be set to. It's not something that you're going to run in too often when you're just adjusting these on your own like we are with this rig, but when you're referencing it with Python and things like that, I think that'll come into play a little more often. So we can leave that at 1.0, but it will switch back to that once we hit OK, since our property value has a decimal point. And then again, the minimum and maximum, pretty self-explanatory. For everything on the foot, let's set them all to -1 and 1. So -1 for the minimum, and then 1 for the maximum. Excellent. Go ahead and hit OK, and now we've got something that can go between -1 and 1. Alright, so now that we know how to set up our properties, I have a list here right on the left of the screen. You can go ahead and pause your video, and we can just change our 8 properties here that we just created to mirror what we have in the list here. So you're really just changing the name, and then you want to change your property value to 0.0 and the minimum to -1.0. It's all the same for all of these, but we do have to set them up in this way for them to work correctly. Okay, and now we are ready to link up our custom properties that we just created to the different bones and functionality that we've built into the foot. So what we can do for each of those is normally what we would do is right click on this, and the easiest way to do it is to copy as new driver and paste that onto the rotation that we want or the movement that we want on the bone. I've been having a lot of trouble with doing that with these foot pieces here, so we're going to have to do it a little bit more of a manual way, but it's good to see that either way. So what we're going to do here is for the ball lift, what we can do is right click on this, and we're going to copy data path. And then we're going to go over to the bone that we want to add that as a driver to, which is going to be our ball lift bone, which is this one right here. We can go into transform, and essentially what we want to do is we want to link that custom property there to a certain rotation on this. And in this case, it's going to be the X rotation like this. But just to make sure that we're getting the right rotation, we need to change our transform orientation to local. And in this case, local is the same as global, but in some of these bones cases, that might not be the case. So we want to just make sure, because these rotations work on the local scale, we want to make sure that we're looking at the local ones so we know that we're choosing the right rotation. So in this case, we want to put it on the X rotation, which is this one here, right here. And what we're going to do is right click on this now, and we are going to add driver. It's going to pop up with the driver menu here. And what we're going to do in here is we just want to link that. We don't need to do an expression or anything. We just want to link what we just copied to this rotation here. Oops. If that closes out on you, you can just right click and go to edit driver. So I'm going to change this drop down next to var. We're going to change this to single property, which is basically telling Blender that we want to link this to a certain property either on this bone or another one. So then the property, we have to locate that, which is it's going to be within the armature because it's on our foot controller. And then it asks us for the path, which is a little more complicated than when we're choosing bones, through the inverse kinematics or something like that. So it asks for the path, which you can type in manually, but the reason we copied it is because it looks like this when you paste it in there. And by the way, you will want to paste that with Control V, because if you right click on this, I don't believe it gives you the option to paste that in there. But it's not too bad. You have to do pose.bones, and then you do the different names of the things there, but it's just a lot easier to copy that first. So now if we hit update dependencies and we go into our foot controller and we change the ball lift, we can see that it is moving the ball lift around exactly how we want it to. So we're going to do that for all of these guys here. So next we'll do the heel lift. So again, you're in here and you're right clicking on this, you're doing copy data path, going to your heel lift, and we can see that we want this to be the X rotation as well. So we'll right click on X rotation, add driver, change this to single property. Property is going to be armature, and then we can paste in our path, update dependencies. Back in the foot controller, the next one we want to work with is the heel swivel. We want to right click on that and copy data path. Again, that's going to be on the same bone here. It's just going to be a different rotation. In this case, it's going to be the Y rotation that we want that to affect. So right click on the Y rotation, add driver. Change this to single property. Armature is our property, and then paste our path in, update dependencies. Back in our foot controller, we're doing roll left next, copy data path. And the rolls are these two side bones here. So we're rolling to the left, that's this side here. And it looks like it's going to be the Z rotation. So we can right click on Z for that one, add driver. Change this to single property, armature, and paste in our path. Oops. Next we've got roll right, copy data path, go into our roll right bone here, which is this one. Again, it's on the Z axis we're affecting. Add driver, change this to single property, armature, and then paste our path in, update dependencies. Next we have the toe lift, copy data path. That's this one right at the tip here, and the toe lift is this movement here, so we want the X-axis. Add driver, that's a single property, armature, and paste our path in. Next we have the toe swivel, copy data path. That's on the same bone, but this time it's going to be on the y-axis that we want to affect. Add driver, change this to single property. Property will be armature, and the path we can just paste in there. And then we want the toe wiggle is the last one. Copy data path. The toe wiggle is this bone here. It's what lets us wiggle that toe piece there. And it looks like we're using the x-axis there. So right click on X, add driver, single property, armature, and paste our path in. Let's test all that functionality we just built in. So down here we can test our ball lift, which we already knew that one worked. Our heel lift, looking good. Heel swivel, excellent. Our roll left, that looks good. Roll right, excellent. Toe lift, perfect. Toe swivel, excellent. And the toe wiggle, excellent, excellent, excellent. That looks good. So that does it for our foot. Let's head on up to the hand. And again, in pose mode, we're going to be adding a bunch of custom properties to this guy. We've already got a couple, but we want to add a bunch more. Now, I like to control all of my finger movements from this hand controller here. If you prefer to specifically select all of your bones and move them that way when you're animating, that's okay too. You won't need nearly as many custom properties, but I do prefer to add everything in here and just control all of the fingers from the same spot. So I will be adding 22 custom properties to this so that I can control all the fingers from the same spot. Here's our list for all of the custom properties that we're going to create. It does include the IK, FK, and socket stiffness, which we have already created, so we don't have to worry about those. But the rest of them, we're changing the names. Property value we're going to set to 0.0 for all of them. Default value we'll leave at 1.0. And then we've got some minimums and maximums, which are all subject to whatever you would like. I found that these values worked really well for me, but you can change these up anytime. So let's go through and let's just add all of these properties here that we have. Okay, so now what we want to do is add or link up our functionality to our custom properties that we just created here. I have been having some trouble with Blender crashing and just not working in general when I try to just copy the custom properties as new drivers and paste them as drivers onto the fingers and other effectors we have here. So I will be doing all of this the same way that we did the foot, where we will copy this as a data path and then go into the specific bone and add it as a driver on the rotation that we want. Feel free to give it a shot with just right-clicking here, copy as new driver, and then going to the place you want on the bone you want and just pasting it as a new driver, which I don't have as an option right now because I don't have it copied. Feel free to try that out. Make sure you save beforehand just in case Blender crashes out on you. I'm not really sure why that's happening to us right now, but feel free to give it a shot if you'd like. What we're going to do first is we can do the hand bend. I'm going to right click here and copy data path. On the hand bend, what we want to do is we want this to be affecting the Y rotation of the hand bend, as you can see. So I'm going to right click on Y, add driver, and then just like we did with the foot, it's a single property, armature, and then paste the path in there. Then we're going to add all the finger pieces here. This part I'm going to fast forward a little bit through to shorten down the video a bit, but what we're doing is we're for each of the index 1 through 3, middle 1 through 3, pinky, ring, all of that, it's going to be affecting the X rotations of each of the pieces of the fingers. 1, 2, and 3 going out like that, and then the waggle for each figure will be affecting the Z rotation like that. So here we go. Now for the thumb, what we want to do is for thumb 1 through 3, we are going to be having those be affected on the Z-axis there. And then we've got the thumb bend and thumb swivel. The thumb bend and thumb swivel will both be done on the rotator here. So bend being the X-axis and swivel being the Y-axis. So let's add those on. Perfect. So lastly, let's just go through and test all of our functionality. Excellent. Looks like everything is working correctly on mine. If you're having any trouble, it most likely has to do with the driver being set up on the wrong rotation axis or something like that. Just confirm that it is on the right axis, and if it's not working at all, you could always delete the driver from the bone and re-add it and see if that works. But otherwise, that'll do it for this video. In the next video, we're going to be talking about mirroring the arm and the leg over to the other side and getting our rig nice and symmetrical. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.